so obviously we started doing this little Candid Conversation series very randomly. Like it really wasn't planned. And it's become something that several people have reached out and said, this is awesome. When's the next one? Or can I be part of it? Or I have something to share. And since we see you two so often, we thought it would be really cool to bring you in to the next session and talk about some of the things that we talk about on a daily basis. Katie, of course, you're our farrier. Lauren, of course, you're our trainer, and are at the barn often enough that things like horse care and barefoot versus shoeing, blanket or no blanket, stall or no stall, those things come up in conversation, and they come up in life, and they come up for all of us as equestrians with what's the right answer. And unfortunately, there is no right answer. You know, it's situational and it's individual, and it's each horse is so very different that that for me is the most important part about this series. Is we're not here to say this is right and this is wrong and you're stupid and we're smart. It's what are the options available and what works best for you and the why behind them that I guess we've found so exciting about these conversations, because it's stuff that we talk about at the barn randomly or riding or whatever. And so now, just instead of a few boarders getting together to talk, we're going to bring in some experts in the equestrian community. And not on any, you know, you're not the expert on blanketing, but you are a farrier. You have the training. You are a trainer. You have, you know, the certification, and you know stuff. And so, you know, welcome and thank you, because we know you're both super busy. Yes. But, you know, I don't even know what we want to talk about first. Well, we're about to get, supposedly, it's North Carolina, snow. Right. So now that I'm prepared and all my stalls are ready and I have my hay and my water and my stuff, it probably won't snow. But since I just spent, 3 hours preparing 2 extra stalls,
that's how it always goes.
you know, but then that's half of our farm. Because we're a boarding facility, we have pasture board horses, we have full board horses. So I have some that are going to get blanketed tonight. I have some that are going to not get blanketed ever. My personal horses never get blanketed. They're horses, they get their winter coats, they're good. I also have horses that need it. And there's a million reasons to blanket or not blanket, but maybe we talk about stalls and blanketing, you know?
Let's do that.
You've got a senior horse.
I do. So, I mean, in your experience and your thoughts, well, and we know my boy's a little rotund, and he's, you know, he's an insulin resistant horse. And so he has some extra padding.
Yes.
But he also has arthritis. So in your experience, or if he was your horse, when would you think of blanketing him or not blanketing him? Or would you think of stalling him or not stalling him under certain circumstances? Like, what would be your recommendation to me? Because, you know, I can be a bit of a fussy mom. And I can overthink things.
Well, you love him. You care.
I do. I do.
And I'm the aunt that reels her on in.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I even say that. I'm like, am I overthinking this? And you're like,
yes,
you are.
You are. And
I'm
I love you for it, though.
But well, I think within that is each horse is different. Each circumstance is different. And that's the biggest thing to keep in mind is there is not one answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a 40-something-year-old who stays outside all the time. He has a thick coat. He likes to be outside. He doesn't get the shivers. He moves well still. So my horses personally are out 24/7. They have man-made shelter. They have trees. When it gets nasty for our old guys, we do open several stall doors, but 9 times out of 10 they don't go in it.
Okay.
So when you're watching the horse behavior, contradictory to what our brain says, is 9 times out of 10 they're out in it. And their ideal temperature is significantly less than where our ideal temperature is. So the cold is actually a more pleasant space for them to be in versus the heat in the middle of the summer.
Oh, yeah.
So when it comes to blanketing, I think it really is a little bit of that self-check of, is this mom needing a blanket because mom's cold?
Right.
Or mom wants him to have a blanket because I think he needs to have a blanket, or it makes mom feel better.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
And so in that case, I wear the blanket.
Yes.
Well, you should, yes. And I've had boarders that say, no, it's freezing. He needs it. And I went, okay, I just work here. I do. And if my boarders want a blanket on their horse, that horse is getting a blanket.
Right.
However, if that horse is sweating under the blanket, it's my job to say, hey, just so you know, I will still blanket your horse.
Right.
But he's sweating, you know, and I have had to have that conversation. And thankfully, the owner was open to it and watched the video of him sweating. Because I don't want to just say, hey, this is my opinion, or ever make it seem like I don't feel like blanketing. I'll blanket. I'll be out in the snow. I don't care.
Right.
But for the horse, if it's not what's best for him, I'll do it if that's what they want. Not if it's hurting him, mind you. But if I can educate them or share with them or help them, then that too. And we've had the conversation, you know.
And it's being specific as to when you put it on.
Yes.
Right.
Because if you put a dry blanket on a dry horse, then that may keep them warm or hot.
Correct.
If you're putting a dry blanket on a wet horse, you could be causing more.
Yep.
I don't want to say damage, but you could be.
But you could.
Causing a little bit more problems than when you're putting it on and why you're putting it on.
Absolutely.
Their body, I mean, they'll naturally evaporate all that water if they are wet. And if you cover that up, it's not, you know, they can't do that. And so they may get colder as the night gets colder. So, you know, as a boarding facility, as you run it, you know, you have to be aware of all the factors.
Sure.
Obviously do what people want you to do within the best interest of the horse.
Yeah.
But, you know, I like how you'll take a video of it or picture or educate. Again, it's not our opinion what's right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's, hey, this is what's happening and this is what's probably best for the horse.
Yeah.
Right.
This is what could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's their choice as to what they want to do with that information.
Exactly.
I just work here.
Yes.
You know.
Right.
But you've made some different
Yes.
choices for Chief
Yes.
based on our conversations and talking to vets and talking to farrier and, you know.
Which I love that I can, you know, you guys have a lesson with Lauren or Katie, you come to do Chief's
Right.
feet, and I'm like, hey, by the way, can you like look at this? And then, but I love it because it's in my mind, or I ask you, and
Sure.
I'm like, I haven't seen this before.
Right.
I'm thinking this is how I should treat it, but what do you think?
Yeah.
Like it gives me that like peace of mind.
You have like a community of
Yes.
people to kind of weigh in and help you make an informed decision
Right.
rather than guess or ask Google.
And it's beneficial for like asking your vet or asking your farrier, asking your trainers, because perhaps you only see Chief or you've only had Chief.
Yes.
And so when you have a small bubble of
Yep.
knowledge of hands-on experience with one particular horse, that's what you're known as.
Yeah.
Even if you spend hours on Google,
Mhm.
which I don't recommend.
No.
Right.
Down the rabbit hole.
Terrify you.
Yeah, right. But when we see hundreds of horses
Right.
a month or whatnot, there are certain cases where you're like, oh, I've seen this in this case,
Right.
and we did this for it.
Right.
It's just that different experience and diversity.
Well, you also help check me as well, because I can, you know, think about, well, you know, like when you came earlier this week, and then I knew he was off on the left hind, but I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm seeing it. And then you confirmed it. You're like, he'll be fine. Just, you know, it's just like, am I worrying too much? You know, and it's concern, but it can be borderline crazy, and I know that, and I own that. So, but you
Well, we're
all,
like that with our own personal.
Yeah.
And we are, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was
And
just
personal or not, I got 20 horses that are all mine,
Right.
even though they're owned by other people.
well, you got 40. You got the horses, and you got us.
And I'll take it
Oh,
happily,
okay.
but I get to be
Mother
the
Goose.
craziest one on this farm. As long as you all know that, we're good.
thinking. And the nice thing here for all of us is we have each other.
Yes.
You know, obviously, you know, I've come to you and I've said, hey, I ran into this problem with a horse that you trim. Have you seen it? What's going on? So I can communicate with you, and then that better helps me communicate with an example you
Right.
know, for you know, to ease your worry, if you will.
Yeah,
Right.
Or
absolutely.
even say, hey, Katie, do you mind calling this person?
Right.
I've sent you pictures before, and then same with Amy on other things.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have the community again.
Sure.
And the communication, because
Communication,
and yeah,
exactly.
that too, because I've sent pictures, Katie, and I'm like, okay, this is what this is, and you're so kind because you'll answer me or you'll call me, and I learned so much, and so that I'm grateful. And Lauren too, you know, this is what I'm working with Chief, and I'm running into this, and you say, well, did you try this? No, didn't, but thank you. I'll
Takes
try
a village,
it.
you know, but it's nice that we have that.
I know.
And
Yeah.
it's the education, and if I don't know something, I'm going to reach out to somebody that does.
Absolutely.
I'm not just going to say, well, let's give this a shot if
Right.
I'm not sure.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know, I'm going to reach out, whether it's a fellow trainer or a healthcare professional. in some
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah,
Or
for
someone
sure.
that's ran a boarding facility. So when I owned mine, I
Yeah.
reached out to Amy a lot.
Right.
Right.
And others that have been doing it for a while, and
Mhm.
I've gained so much knowledge that way.
Absolutely. Me too.
And it helps me better make better decisions for my own horses.
Sure.
Right.
Well,
But-
I think what's great about the community that you have here at Lebanon Lane is that you guys all want to learn.
Yes.
You are those hands-on horse owners that want to learn. Because for me, I'm going to educate and talk your ear off about everything. Because if I can educate you, then when you're talking to me, you can speak my language.
Yeah.
Or when we're talking to Lauren, we all have the same language, so we have better communication of, okay, is this really an emergency?
Right.
Or can I get there tomorrow? And you knowing what's going on with your horses.
Mhm. It's
Not
important.
Staying up all night worrying.
Right.
Okay,
Which,
I've
you know.
never done that.
Liar.
I doubt that.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Okay, not loser, liar. Okay,
Yeah,
anyway.
that one. Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know, in terms of blanketing and again with owning my
Yeah.
my own facility at one point, I was able to watch the horses more than when I could see them at
Yeah.
the boarding facilities I've previously been at. And they 100%, okay, maybe 95% of the time want to be out.
Yeah.
And they might be out under trees, or they might be literally pouring rain, freezing cold. I've seen them at the top of the hill up by where our house used to be. House, pasture. It goes down the hill to their nice covered run-in shelter. And they're up at the top of the hill.
Mhm.
The wind's blowing. It's freezing cold. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
It's infuriating.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're just standing there, their heads down, but they're happy.
They're content. That's their
They know
normal.
They have the option. So, whether rain or cold, blanketing for me has never been a thing. But I've also not had a senior horse that maybe has needed it.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
if you allow them to grow their winter coat, they will do so. But then, kind of on a side note, I've had when Wyatt was younger. This is speaking in summertime. He held on to his winter coat into summer, so I had to do something about it.
Sure.
So when it comes into winter, maybe they're not growing their winter coat like they should. You know, you could maybe help them out a little, but
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, in the grand scheme, their bodies know what to do.
Mhm.
Right.
I have found that if you leave the blanket off and watch the horse, right? They're not in distress, they're not shivering, they're just being a horse,
Yep.
then that gives the horse an opportunity to grow in a natural coat. Even the ones that have come from barns where they've always been blanketed, right? They're horses, give them a minute for that natural instinct to kick in, and it will. Now again, it goes back to I'm cold, so my horse is cold. And then I've had owners that are like, well, you know, it's going to be cold tonight. I have to put the blanket on, and then the blanket stays on, or it comes off and on, and that horse is never going to get a winter coat ever. That's fine, but then don't say my horse doesn't get a winter coat. He can't.
And if he can't, then if he doesn't have the opportunity, then you can't choose then not to blanket him in the
Right.
middle of the winter.
Right.
Say, well, or the blanket tears, you need to buy a new one. You haven't
Sure.
bought one yet. Well, you better,
You better get on it.
you know, because he didn't have the opportunity. We didn't allow that.
Yeah.
Which is fine if that's the choice.
Yep.
It's just we need to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever's best for the horse
Yeah.
is, I think, what we all need to do as owners. And if I didn't have this place and had the opportunity to see as many different horses as I had, I might not know either. But I would definitely look to someone more senior than I in the equestrian community to say, what do you do? What do you think is best? And get some advice. Not everybody does, and that's okay too. But, you know, we've all got options. So,
Right.
you
I
know,
think it's one of those situations too. Like I can say all of my horses have blankets.
yeah, I've got blankets.
I think Zoe's worn a blanket 3 times, and she's worn it when we were trailering. We were trailering out, and it was like 0 degrees, so I put her blanket on.
Right.
All of mine have it for the just in case.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Gabriel has never worn his. John never wore his. Now, John was in his 40s, and he was blanketed at his previous barn.
Okay.
So they had put a blanket on him because he was senior.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely didn't need it because he was as thick as a woolly mammoth. But then when he came to me in May, and that winter I did not blanket him because he didn't need it.
Right. Yeah.
And he did perfectly fine.
Yep.
So they all have them for the just in case, but
They're the emergency.
really
Yeah.
put
Right.
on. Right.
Sure. Yeah, I've used my just in case blankets on boarders' horses more than I have on my own because, to your point, there was no backup blanket. And so we blanket at breakfast and at dinner. So if it's predicted to be whatever it is that the owner says, and each horse on this farm is different, so I have to read the list every time. But if their blanket is too wet to put back on and they don't have a backup, now I have boarders that have 3, 4, 7 backups, I will grab one of mine if it fits and if it's appropriate, because that's what they're used to, that's what they have to have.
Yeah.
You know, as a facility owner, you have to, in a sense, have those backups.
Yeah.
Or have, obviously, you know, it's another conversation too, but have extra medication.
Oh, yeah.
extra everything.
Totally.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Always that.
Well, and I think it's good too for what you just said that you put them on and you take them off morning and night.
Yep.
Because you can't put a blanket on in, we'll say November,
Mhm.
and then take it off in February.
Correct.
And be totally surprised as to what your horse looks like when you take that blanket off. Because
Right.
you need to be checking for the rubs and the marks. You need to be checking weight because weight drastically changes with
Yep.
horses, whether they have blankets on or not. And
Yeah.
you can take that blanket off and be very scared and surprised when
Yeah.
you see the body condition of your horse.
Well, and the
Absolutely.
temperature, especially in North Carolina, varies so
Oh
much.
my
So
gosh.
we can be 20, 30 degrees in the evening and then crazy at 70,
Yeah.
right? And so to have the blanket on, that's when the sweating would happen too.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Which is a whole nother
Yeah.
scare. Because
Yes.
then I'm, colic, radar.
yeah, right.
My stress level's always through the roof here, but that's okay. I'm happy. Everything's fine.